Greetings everyone, I'm Adam Haritan, and right behind me is the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Maybe you've had the pleasure of riding on the Turnpike from the western side of Pennsylvania, 360 miles all the way to the PA-New Jersey border. Now usually I'm riding in a car on the Pennsylvania Turnpike to get to a state forest or a park to find interesting plants and mushrooms, but today's a little different because today I'm outside of the car and I'm looking for plants that grow alongside the Turnpike. And more specifically, right behind the camera is this cleared gas pipeline area that hosts an incredible diversity of plants because it's in an early stage of ecological succession. A lot of sunlight's coming down, and there's just some incredible diversity of plants and wildflowers and trees and shrubs that I want to introduce you to. So that's what we're going to do today. And I just want you to keep in mind that it's going to be somewhat noisy because the Turnpike's behind me. You know, usually I'm in the forest where there isn't much noise. There's not a lot of sound pollution. All you hear is the forest sounds, but not necessarily today. So keep that in mind and don't say I didn't warn you. It might be loud during certain parts. So let's go head over there and see which plants are growing right along the Turnpike. So this is the gas pipeline right away that I was referring to, and if you didn't know that there was a turnpike right over there, if you didn't hear all the traffic, all the cars and trucks buzzing by, then you might assume that I'm exploring a meadow in western Pennsylvania, because this does resemble a meadow habitat. You got many of the trees way off in the distance, you've got a lot of the shrubs creeping out a little further, then you have the herbaceous plants, the perennials, the biennials, and the annuals creeping out even further onto this maintained path. Now, surprisingly, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of native plants inhabiting this particular ecosystem. Let's start with one really interesting native plant that's growing right over there, so we gotta take a little walk and I'll show you which native plant that I'm talking about. Okay, so I know I appear really short in this shot, but I only want to show you how tall these plants are right here. So are you surprised that these beautiful plants are just growing right alongside the Turnpike? Maybe you shouldn't be surprised, because whenever you travel through the Pennsylvania Turnpike, you'll see this all up and down the sides of the road. This can be a somewhat weedy species. It's a native plant, and it's very, very beautiful, and this particular species can grow to be incredibly tall. So this one used to be in the Eupatorium genus, but then it got separated out, put into a different genus, which is the Eutrochium genus. This is a Joe Pye weed. Now what does Eutrochium mean? Well, EU, means well or truly, and trocho means wheel-like. Because of these leaves, they're whorled. They encircle the stalk. So whenever we talk about leaf arrangement on various plants, many times we're talking about oppositely or paired arrangement, so they're opposite one another. We're talking about alternately spaced, so staggered left and right, all up and down the stalk. There's another way that leaves are arranged, and that's whorled, W-H-O-R-L-E-D, not W-O-R-L-D, whorled, but whorled, W-H-O-R-L-E-D. Well, Eutrochium, Joe Pye weed, has these whorled leaves. That's one way to positively identify this plant. This particular species is Eutrochium fistulosum. It can grow up to 10 feet tall. This is a very common species, especially in thickets, in meadows, alongside trails. So I'm not really surprised that I saw this plant, but look how beautiful these are right here. Definitely a late summer bloomer, very valuable to wildlife. Eutrochium fistulosum Joe Pye weed, one of 4 species that we have here in Pennsylvania, and I believe there are 5 that grow in North America. Beautiful plant. Let's go see if we can find some more. So the rain's coming down, but it's not going to stop me from botanizing because there's just too much to see today. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun watching this video so far. We're going to talk about another plant in the aster family, somewhat closer to my height. This one kind of looks like Joe Pye weed, but you can see in the distance there's a lot of Joe Pye weed back there. But in the foreground we have Ironweed Vernonia. So it's in the Vernonia genus. What's interesting about Vernonia is that it used to house about 1,500 species. Now there's about 22 species in the Vernonia genus. So clearly some taxonomic work has been conducted on this genus. Vernonia is named after a British bryologist and botanist who was active in the 1600s and 1700s by the name of William Vernon. Now there are about 3 species in Pennsylvania, I believe, and there's only 2 in the western half of Pennsylvania. There's New York ironweed, which is Vernonia noveboracensis, and there's tall or giant ironweed, which is Vernonia gigantea. And to tell the difference, you got to look at the involucre bracts, these bracts that enclose the flowers right underneath. And if the bracts end in filiform tips or thread-like or wiry tips, then it's New York ironweed. If you don't see those filiform tips, then it's tall ironweed, Vernonia gigantea. So looking closely at this, I do not see those filiform tips. So it's Vernonia gigantea, tall ironweed. Now this plant, unfortunately, is mowed down a lot in farms, but it holds high ecological value because numerous insects and animals depend on this plant. You've got lots of long-tongued bees, bee flies, butterflies that utilize the nectar. You've got the caterpillars of various moths consuming the leaves, and other animals and insects that depend on this plant for their survival. So I'd recommend leaving some of this out there in the field because it holds such high ecological value and it's incredibly beautiful. This is another one that only has those disc flowers, doesn't have those ray flowers like we might see in a sunflower. But I think I see another plant over there that does have those ray flowers that I keep alluding to. So let's go talk about that plant so I can show you what those flowers look like. So here we have yet another member of the aster family. This one's incredibly common here in western Pennsylvania. You're walking up and down the trails, even in the woods, sometimes in shaded habitats, you might see some wing stem. You're driving up and down the highway, driving east to west or west to east in the turnpike, you're probably going to see some wing stem as well. It kind of looks like a sunflower, and it's in that sunflower family, the Asteraceae family, but this one is conspicuously winged along the stem, hence the name wing stem. So when you look closely, you see this stem that has wings on it. There's another one over here. This one's much, much taller. I'm seeing the wings. You can see the wings here as well. The Latin name of this is Verbicina alternifolia. This is a genus of about 300 species worldwide. Interestingly, this is the only native species here in Pennsylvania. That genus Verbicina is mostly found in the southern portion of North America, and the greatest diversity around the world is in Mexico and also in the Andes. So we're very fortunate here in Pennsylvania to have at least one member of the Verbicina genus. So wing stem, conspicuously winged stems. Let's go see if we can find some more plants to discuss along this turnpike. Okay, so now we're moving away from the margins. We're looking directly on this path. And whenever we do look on the path, we look really, really closely. We can find a plant that is so incredibly overlooked, you'll never see it driving 70 miles per hour on the turnpike. You gotta pull over in order to see this plant. This one is Indian tobacco, Lobelia inflata, also known as inflated lobelia, also pukeweed and vomit weed. So that Lobelia genus is named after Matthias de la Obel, who was a Flemish physician and botanist in the 1500s. So way back in the 1500s, this genus was named after him. This is a pretty large genus, about 415 species worldwide, and taxonomists aren't sure which family of plants this belongs to. Some people put it in the bellflower family, Campanulaceae. Some people put this in its own family, the Lobelia family, Lobeliaceae. Personally, I haven't done any taxonomic research on this plant, so I can't tell you who's right, which family this belongs to. So we could say either the bellflower or the Lobelia family. Now this one grows all up and down the eastern portion of the United States, except for Florida. So apparently this plant hasn't been collected in Florida. But if you live in Florida, if you found this plant, let me know, because maybe we could put that on record. So this is a smaller plant, sometimes with hairs along the stalk, and the flowers are really, really small, and they're whitish to blue. The leaves have teeth around them, and what's very diagnostic for this plant would be the fruit capsules, which are inflated. They look like bladders. You gotta wait till the flowers turn into the fruits, but whenever you see it, it's very characteristic for this plant. That's why they call it inflated lobelia or Lobelia inflata, Indian tobacco, because this plant had been and is currently added to smoking mixtures. So this is an incredibly common plant. You're really gonna see it out in the open. You might see it in shaded habitats as well. If you've never seen it before, get out and see it, especially if you live in eastern North America. If you're driving along the turnpike, pull over, safe place to do so. See if you can find some inflated lobelia yourself. Let's go see what other plants we can find. Okay, so we're still botanizing along the turnpike, but I actually want to turn our attention towards the shrubs and the trees now. You know, we focused a lot on the herbaceous layer, a lot of the perennials, the biennials, the annuals, but let's not forget about the shrubs, let's not forget about the trees. But before we get into there, I just want to point out we got some Canada goldenrod here. We also have blackberries. We've got pilewort underneath here, a lot of this pilewort, a lot of other plants as well. We have impatiens, so there's just so much diversity here, as I already mentioned. You don't need to go deep into a forest in order to find a lot of plants and to learn new plants. You can literally do it along the turnpike. But now let's turn our attention towards this incredible shrub that I actually can't believe is growing here, because typically this grows in wet areas, along swamps. not necessarily in dry upland areas, specifically along the turnpike. This is a dogwood plant, Cornus amomum, or Cornus amomum. Kind of has a funny species name, so I'll just call it Silky Dogwood because that's its common name. This holds such high ecological value because the dense low vegetation of the shrub, it only grows to be about 12 feet tall. It's great wildlife cover for a variety of animals. So this is actually in flower right now, believe it or not. I mean, we're seeing a lot of fruits that have already been eaten, but what drew me to this shrub was actually the flowers. So if I crawl back here, can you see this flower back here? It smells fantastic. And it's late August, still in flower. And of course we're seeing these beautiful blue metallic fruits. Not many plants have these metallic fruits that are eaten by a wide variety of birds, including catbirds and mockingbirds and cardinals. Deer browse on the foliage, squirrels consume these fruits as well. So I can't say enough good things about this shrub right here, Silky Dogwood. And so if you're looking to plant some native shrubs on your property, and you live in eastern North America, consider planting Cornus amomum or Cornus amomum, the Silky Dogwood. Let's see what other trees or shrubs are growing right alongside this margin. All right, so I'm super excited to find one of my favorite trees here in Pennsylvania. Grows all over eastern North America. Very common tree, so common that it is found in every single county in Pennsylvania. Doesn't matter what county you're in. You could be in northwestern Pennsylvania, you could be in southwestern, you could be in the central part of the state, you could be in northeastern Pennsylvania, southeastern Pennsylvania. You will find this tree. This is the white oak tree, Quercus alba. This tree can grow to be over 100 feet tall. It can grow for 400 years or more. So such a huge, stately tree. Now these ones aren't that big. Maybe this is about 50 or 60 years old, but there's a nice grove of them. I mean, there's one right here. This is a maple, probably Norway maple, but more white oaks. A bunch of white oaks over there, white oaks right over here. If you didn't hear the turnpike over there, you might think I'm just exploring the woods here in western Pennsylvania, but I assure you that there's a turnpike over there. There are cars going 70 to 80 miles per hour right now. Now, the leaves are very diagnostic for this tree because they have rounded lobes, which is characteristic for that white oak group within the Quercus genus. So this is Quercus alba. This is a member of the white oak group, but there's also the red oak group, which would have bristle-tipped points or bristle-tipped lobes. And maybe we'll find another tree that has that characteristic. Now, this tree used to be way more common in Pennsylvania before the logging industry hit, before people started settling all over Pennsylvania. And the red oak tree, which is Quercus rubra, took over a lot of those spots. We have way more Quercus rubra right now compared to this one, but I always love finding this tree. It's easily identified based on its bark because it's lightish gray and it's somewhat shaggy. So it has these grayish strips, not shaggy like a shagbark hickory, but much more shaggy compared to a red oak tree. I also like this tree because I like to eat the acorns from white oak trees. They typically germinate in the fall as well, unless squirrels get to them first and start eating them, or other animals get to them like jays. But if you do get to them early enough, you can process them, remove the tannins, and you can eat them. But because they germinate in the fall, they only have a small window of opportunity to collect them. So sometimes they go for the members of the red oak group because they don't germinate until the following spring. But these acorns are nice and big, and I really like that. So Quercus alba, the white oak tree. Let's go over there because there's another member of the Quercus genus, another beautiful tree, but a different tree. How about this gorgeous tree right here? I wonder how many people even know that this tree exists. Everyone's driving so fast on the highway, myself usually included. But today I'm going to give credit to a lot of the plants that I've been overlooking all these years, including this beautiful tree right here, which is surprisingly a member of the oak genus. Even though it's very un-oak-like whenever you look at the leaves. I mean, these leaves don't have any lobes, they're very glossy and leathery. Usually whenever we think of oak trees, like a white oak, it's got the rounded lobes, a red oak or a black oak has the pointed lobes, but they have lobes nonetheless. This one doesn't, but it does have a bristle-tipped point located at the apex of the leaf, which puts us in the red oak group. What tree is this? This is Quercus imbricaria, the shingle oak. Very common in the Midwestern states, and it does reach here into Pennsylvania, although mostly in western Pennsylvania, but I think there are some populations in the southeastern portion of the state as well. They call it shingle oak because centuries ago the wood was used for roofing shingles, and this tree will grow to be about 60 to 80 feet tall, so it's not a massive tree like a white oak tree. But if you get out to Raccoon Creek State Park here in western Pennsylvania, there's a really large shingle oak. And I think the last measurement was maybe 10 years ago, but it was about 88 feet tall. But there are trees that are shingle oaks in eastern Pennsylvania that are over 100 feet tall. That's pretty large for a shingle oak. Now, I don't eat the acorns from this tree, even though you could. I don't, because they're rather small, and I don't see a lot of these trees. I tend to see them planted in parks, but rarely am I out in the woods or in an area where I find a lot of shingle oak trees. So I just leave the acorns behind for the wildlife, and I opt instead for acorns from northern red oak or a black oak tree or a white oak tree. But it's a beautiful tree, probably similar age to a lot of those white oak trees, but I'm just guessing right here. And there is one plant that's growing right underneath another shingle oak over there that I want to end this video with. So take a walk with me and we'll end this very fascinating organism that kind of looks like a plant, kind of doesn't look like a plant. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so believe it or not, I'm still along the turnpike right now. You probably hear the cars and trucks, but it kind of looks like a different habitat. I mean, now I'm in a shaded, wooded habitat, just a little further off the trail. This is a shingle oak tree right here, Quercus imbricaria, another one. There's actually quite a few in this particular area. Smaller trees, younger trees, but they're still Quercus imbricaria, and they look really healthy. Now I want you to turn your attention towards this fascinating organism down here. I've talked about this one in the past, and I'm really surprised to see this here. I probably wouldn't expect to find a lot of this plant in a rather disturbed area, but I'm seeing it today, which is a good indicator of health in this particular habitat. This is an achlorophyllous or achlorophyllous plant, meaning it lacks chlorophyll. This is Indian pipe or corpse plant, Monotropa uniflora. So it kind of looks like a fungus, and a lot of people confuse this for a fungus, but it is a wildflower, and I usually do see it in shaded areas. I rarely see it out in the open. It tends to thrive in these shaded areas, but it's only going to thrive if there's a healthy fungal community in the soil. And so how does this one obtain its food? Well, this is a mycoheterotroph, meaning it hooks up to a fungus, specifically one in a family known as the Russulaceae family, which includes Russula mushrooms and Lactarius mushrooms and members of other genera. And those mushrooms obtain their carbon fix through trees that are photosynthesizing, specifically trees in the Fagaceae family, which would be oak trees and beech trees. They fix carbon, sugars, send them over to the fungus. This one taps into the network and obtains its nutrient fix that way. And I know some people are using this plant medicinally, but I encourage you to do more research on that if you're interested in that particular topic. So I am interested in learning more about this plant because I don't think we know too much about it currently, but I'm really fascinated by it, and I'm really excited to see it today right alongside the turnpike. So you don't need to go too far off the beaten path in order to find this plant that some people consider to be rare, but here in Pennsylvania, I do see a lot of it, so I don't think that it's very rare. But that means that there are Russula mushrooms or Lactarius mushrooms here somewhere, even if we don't see it. The mycelium is in the soil somewhere, so maybe if I come back after it's been really rainy, really moist, really wet, I will see some Russula mushrooms, because that's where it's getting its nutrients. And the Russula mushroom, remember, it's probably getting its nutrients from this shingle oak tree right here. Okay, so that was just a brief taste into the botanical wonders that could be found alongside this 360-mile highway known as the Pennsylvania Turnpike, I-76, and we basically looked at a really small patch here in western Pennsylvania. And I hope this inspires you to get out and not necessarily limit your search for botanical beauties and plants and even mushrooms, trees, and shrubs and wildlife to just the pristine habitats. I mean, even just exploring your backyard, just a small patch of your backyard, or a disturbed area like a turnpike can do so much for your quest to learning all there is to learn about your land. I mean, there's so many plants that I don't know here. I mean, I only showed you a few plants and ones that I'm comfortable with teaching, but I'm gonna spend a lot more time here pulling out my botanical keys, consulting various resources in order to really learn and gain a grasp about all the plants that thrive in this state of early ecological succession. Because a lot of sunlight's coming down in this particular area, not very good soil quality, but there's a lot of plants that do appreciate these kinds of conditions. So thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also head on over to learnyourland.com and sign up for the email newsletters so that we can stay in touch with each other. Thanks again. See you on the next video.